So these have been our two most popular drivers so far this year. So we're going to do a little bit of a video about what makes them so good, why have they been so popular, and why have they performed so well in the fitting bay. Have a little bit of chat about each head. Come and watch. So the PING G430 Max, in its second year of cycle. So PING have a 2-year cycle, actually as do Titleist. But what that does from a fitting point of view is it gives us lots of time with the club to understand it. Why does it work a certain way? Why does it suit certain players and deliveries a certain way? So actually for this to have been up there in the most popular in its second year, that really says a lot about how stable a performer, how consistent a performer this is. Because really you only get high sales and high high amounts of recommendations for a club if it's consistent, because you can rely on it, you know what it's going to do. So it's not necessarily the case that just something that's long is going to be fitted lots. Interestingly enough, both of these heads are more on the consistency end of things. Granted, every brand out there is trying to create ball speed, but neither of these are the low spin bomber of the models. And what that really shows is that reliability of flight is part of what makes them very, very popular. So G430 Max, why is this the case? So you have a head where there's lots of weight at the back here. So PING prioritizing forgiveness on this. And yes, there is the 10K model, but actually we're still fitting a lot of players into this head. Now the difference being the 10K, which is sort of the slightly more stable model, which was launched this year, so in this second cycle, has a little bit more weight at the back, which actually for some players exaggerates it too much. I, for one, find that a club with a lot of weight at the back, as I start down, it actually causes the face to open up. So for me, I lose a little bit of directional dispersion when I go to an exaggeratedly back-weighted driver head. So PING already had, in the 430 Max, a very stable club. But it's also, having weight at the back makes it very safe on spin. So in order to get low spin, you put the weight forward and low. So that pulls the centre of mass low and forward in the head, which makes it easier to strike it, essentially above the centre of mass quadrant of the head, which gears spin off. Problem with that is that yes, the good ones are great, but the misses can be pretty harsh. So what you get with a head like this, where there's plenty of weight at the back, is lots of reliability off centre. Now, generally speaking, that's meant high spin, but it moderates it really well. So little advancements like frame stiffness, the way that they're using a thick thin on the face, the way that actually the composite and the materials in the crown are wrapping around the head, weight positioning is really key to this. Something that the Max has done very, very well. What's also been incredibly versatile with this head is where this back weight's movable to. So on average, it's a 20-odd gram, 22 gram mass at the back of the head, this screw-in one. And you can position it in the toe or the heel. Now, the weight movement doesn't make it fade or draw bust because it manages the face open or close. What it does is if you put the mass in the toe side, in this side of the head, that it moves the centre mass a little bit more out towards the toe. So if you miss it on the toe, you get less gearing. So it anti-draws it a little bit if you have a tendency to toe strike a little bit. And similarly, if you move the weight into the heel side, if your strike point gets onto the inside of the head, then it reduces that left to right gearing and holds the shot shape a little bit straighter. So primarily that's what the function of that weight does. But it makes it very versatile. And with the hosel positions, the loft up, loft down, the flatter lie position that it gives us as well as that movable weight, you have a head that's very, very consistent. So what does it set up with down behind the ball? The flat sole that PING have, as well as that slightly raised section at the back, mean that when I put the club behind the ball, it seats really well. And by that I mean it's very, very stable position. No matter where I put it, or how I put it down, it finds that flat position, which means that the face angle is very consistent. There's no interpretation of how the player grounds the club. And the turbulators on the top, which are there from an aerodynamics point of view, also a lot of players have found that's helped them position the ball in the middle of the face. So getting distance from the ball, getting a nice sort of square solid setup position, and all the tech on the inside leads to an incredibly stable, straight hitting, solid golf club. No wonder that's done well this year. So the Titleist GT series, in this instance the GT2. So Titleist have always been very clean, pretty looking club heads, very classic looking club heads. But historically, they have not always been the longest hitting. So what have Titleist done differently this series? Well, you've still got the very classic black, rounded, uniform shaped head, very evenly shaped head from a geometry point of view. It's the kind of head shape that lots of golfers like the look of. But historically, the spins tended to hurt them, or the ball speeds tended to hurt them. So what Titleist have this year is, in the GT series, the crown is their own material. It's a composite material. So in-house, they have designed this material. This wraps around the top, so around the toe, top, and into the heel, which saves mass. Now, the material also has to be stiff and retain shape. It can be lightweight but deform a lot, and then you're losing energy through the deformation and the squashing of the club. So you've got to stay light and stiff in order to stop that head deforming and squashing, which basically pushes the energy back into the ball rather than dissipating through the frame of the head. But that lightweight allows them to move the weight front and back wherever they want to internally in the head. And that front-back element is one of the keys of this head. So yes, we want weight at the back for stability, like with the Ping. It's like doing that with a stance. It stabilizes where it reduces the twisting off center. But move too much back, and then essentially at impact, when the club strikes the ball, the front stops, the back keeps going a bit, so it squashes it and then pops the spin up. So having some weight forward, and this is what the GT series have done, particularly in the 2, they've got some weight at the back, but they've also pushed some weight forwards. So you get the benefit of that low forward CG to keep the spin down, but then the weight at the back for stability. And that weight saving in the crown is critical to that. As with all the brands, they're working around stabilizing around the frame of the face and the face thick and thin positions to optimize ball speed across the face. But in this instance, I think it's that low spin element which has really, really helped Titleist just pick a little bit out of some of the other brands in this more forgiving, more stable head profile. And so the Ping, as we can see from the data, 2.7, for me it's a little bit high. I play a low spin head, but it sits on the moderate end of things. We should see with the Titleist, we should see that spin come down a little bit. So the composite in the crown dulls the sound down a little bit, dampens it down, but we can see from the numbers there, launch angle pretty similar, but the spin's down 300 revolutions over the Ping. So what does that mean? It means a flatter top to the flight, a little bit more run out, and in principle, a little bit more yardage. So the Ping's incredibly stable across the face. The Titleist is pretty close to it, but it's that little bit of a lower spin that then gives this an alternative performance without having to go to a weight forward, lower spin, unforgiving model of head. It's just optimizing flight that little bit more by splitting the weight between the front and the back. And I think part of this is similar to Ping in that you've got that nice sort of flat sole. So again, the club sits on the ground well, very classic shape. With the markings on the face, you can see the portion of the face you're trying to strike with. So it really kind of focuses on that center point of the face. But it's the kind of head shape. Titleist have always been a head that people have found to be attractive, pretty, classic head shapes. They've always aspired to, a lot of players aspire to the Titleist heads. Difference now is there's a model out there for everyone with the GT2, 3 and 4, and there'll be an update to the TSR one coming in the new year. There really are models that pretty much anyone can get into unless you need a heavy draw bias model. So Titleist done very well this year with the GT range. This head's done particularly well. For those reasons, that's why we've fitted a lot of them in the bay this year. So there's a bit of an insight into why these two heads have been our best-selling driver heads this year. Now, whilst they are great heads, this doesn't mean that just because we've done the most of them, fitted the most of them this year, that they're automatically going to be the ones to put in your bag. We would always recommend trying, testing, and go on the data as to why something works best for you. And most importantly, get the consistency of result out of them. So whilst in this test for me, the GT gives me slightly better numbers, for another player, the G430 will give them slightly better numbers. So always test it out for yourself. If you've liked the kind of comparison we've given you, please let us know, drop us a comment. We'll be going through our top selling products in the new year once we've collated all the data from 2024. So we'll do a bit of a run through of the best selling products and why. So if you like this, let us know, subscribe, and we'll do more of this content for you in the future.